What's up, guys? This is GC Off-Road. Today I'm going to be troubleshooting my blower motor and see if I can find a way to make it work. So a little backstory, about a year to a year and a half ago, I was working on my Jeep. I was bed lining the floor pan, and it was winter time, so I had the heat running to keep everything warm in it so the bed liner would set up properly. And about halfway through doing the floor, the blower motor quit working. And I figured it was just a loose wire or something. When I got into looking at it, I had found that the resistor pack that controls the blower motor speed and all was burnt up. The connections were burnt up and melted really bad. They're pretty expensive. I've seen them everywhere online, from $70 something all the way up to almost $200. You know, I don't really need climate control with, you know, different fan speeds and all. If I could just get it running good enough that I can have a defroster when the window fog's over, I'll be fine with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to see if I can run a hard wire from the battery to a relay with a switch in the cab controlling that to at least get the blower motor working for emergency uses. So last night when I got off work, I ran by Walmart, picked up some things that I would need for this project. I got a pack of these EverStart assorted connectors, some heat shrink tubing, a couple different spools of wire. Now, I've got a relay down in my other Jeep that I need to go get, and I'm gonna make up a wiring harness, I guess. I'll try to get as in-depth with this project as I can, and hopefully it works out for us. So to start this project, I've got 3 different spools of wire, 2 12-gauge wires that are 12 foot long, and then 1 roll of 14 gauge that's 30 feet long. The 12-gauge wire is what we're going to use to come from the battery to our fusible link and to our relay to supply power to the blower motor. We're going to use 14-gauge wire to run power to my switch in the cab that will then turn around and run out to power the relay. I already have an extra fusible link at the battery, so what I'm going to do is add a quick connector to my 12-gauge hot wire that I can feed through the firewall and then hook to the battery when I go to wire everything together. So inside the cab, I'm going to get started on the harness that I'm going to need. So I just got my wire cut down to the length I need. It's about 7 feet long. That'll give me some room to play with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip one of the ends and add a quick connector to it. And this will allow me to hook it to the fusible link up under the hood. So I just stripped the wire back and added my quick connector to the line and crimped it on one side. Now I'm going to take my heat shrink tubing and put a piece over that. I'm not going to heat it up just yet. I'm going to wait until I get the fusible link all wired together and everything's working, and then I'll go through and heat shrink it and seal it off. Now that I've got the connector and the heat shrink on the tube, I measured up about 2 or 2.5 feet, and I cut that line in half. And the reason I did that is this wire just needs to run from the fusible link at the battery up to the relay, which I'm going to mount against the firewall kind of up above the computer. So the relay I'll be using to control the blower motor has 5 pins on it. We'll be using 4 of them. You'll have 1 for a ground, 1 for power from switch. Then you'll have 2 that are power from battery, 1 on the battery side and then 1 that leads out and goes to the blower motor to control it. And the way that works is when you flip the power at your switch inside the cab, it sends the signal to the relay, which makes the connection close and allows heavier loads to come from the battery through that relay and into the blower motor. Which also means that if something should go wrong, it draws too much power through, the blower motor's faulty, and it shorts out, it should pop the fuse first. And if all else fails, the relay should fail before the wires fail. I found the relay I'll be using to control the system. As you can see, these connectors I was talking about using are just about a perfect fit for the pins on the back of the relay. They're a good snug fit, they don't just slide off. So I think my idea will work. And as I said, after I go through and get all the wiring done, I'll come back and insulate each connection with a little piece of heat shrink. That way there's no contact between the different points. So I got this wire stripped back. Now I'm gonna add the little quick connector, thread it down onto it like such. I'll try to let you see. The wire's all the way up into this end. Now I can crimp this connection on and slip a piece of heat shrink over it and it'll be ready to go. I got the connector crimped on the end of the wire and I just slipped the heat shrink up over it. Now I'm going to use my lighter to heat it and seal it down. I'd recommend using a heat gun, but I still don't have power hooked up at my new property yet, so I'm going to make do with what I have. A lighter will work, you just got to be a little more careful with how close the heat gets to it. You don't want to scorch it. Make sure you do it evenly all the way around. Not getting it too hot. It's always better to heat it slow. Now we'll let that cool off and we'll have a solid seal around it. So here I've got our first connection done. Like I said, this end runs to the fusible link of the battery. This will run up to where this mounts at the firewall. Now the next line that comes out will be the one that runs from the relay down through the firewall and up to the blower motor. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on that connection next. Now I just finished up making the second wire for the relay. I did it the exact same way I did the first one. Even got the same kind of connector on it, because the wire that comes off the blower motor will connect right here to this plug. Now I need to make a ground wire for this. The way I'm gonna make a ground wire is I'm gonna cut off a few feet, 2-3 feet of black wire. I'll put one of the connectors on that'll match up with the relay, and then I'll leave a couple extra feet just so I can find a good ground location. Once I find the location for the ground, I'll add one of these connectors to it, clean it, and then bolt it down to the ground. So I'm going to end up making two ground wires, one for the blower motor and then one for the relay. Now the one for the relay is going to be a little short because I'm going to run it to the ground on the inside of the fender, up inside the engine bay. And then I'll have to find the location for the one that comes off the blower motor. Now I just finished up the ground wire that runs from the relay to the firewall. And I made it exactly the same way as I did the first two, except this one already has the ring connector that will bolt to the ground location. The other end here just has one of these little slip over connectors for the relay to hook to. So we've got 3 of the 4 connections that we need to make this system work. Now I'm going to get started on the one that runs from the relay to the switch in my cab. Now the wire that I'm going to run for the switch is going to be a little more tricky. It's going to require a couple extra feet of wire, because when it comes to the firewall, I have to run it up under the dash, down up under my center console, and into one of my switches. I've got 3 switches on my shifter bezel, and one of them's for fog lights, one of them's for backup lights, and I've got an extra one that's not hooked to anything yet. So I'm thinking I'm going to use it. It's a toggle switch that's got the red light built into it, so I'll be able to see when it's on, and it should make it hard to forget to turn it off. So I'm going to try to get y'all footage of me making one of these cables up real quick. Here you can see I've got the wire stripped back. I'm going to take my heat shrink and slip it over and just hold it off to the side for now. Then, this may be a little long, so I'm going to trim it up just a little bit. Alright, we just need about a 1/4 inch of wire sticking out. Then I'm going to slip the connector on and twist it until it's down in place. You can see the copper protrudes just a little bit until it hits that stop. Then I'm going to take my pliers and crimp this connection, that way it holds on. Alright. I think it's got a pretty good solid connection. Then I'm going to slip the heat shrink tube up over the connector until it's almost all the way to the tip. Now I'm going to take my lighter, and like on the other ones, I'm going to heat this up slowly and try to get it to shrink all the way down and give us a good tight seal on it. And just like that, got a good solid seal on it. Go ahead and let that cool off a little bit, and that's all it takes to make a connection. This will fit right on here, lock itself in place. It's got a good snug fit, and you don't gotta worry with the heat shrink on here about anything accidentally contacting these points and shorting it out. So now I'm gonna move on to the other end that's gonna connect up at the battery. I just finished up the wire that runs from the switch back up to the relay. And I had to use a different type of connector for this one, but it's basically the same thing. It just has a plastic insulator on it, which works just fine because I've got the switch that I'm using for it. It's not going to interfere with any of the other connectors, and it basically does the same thing that the heat shrink one does. I've got, I think, all the wires for the relay done. Now I've got another wire that I have to make for the switch. It's going to be a ground wire, and I'll have to find a ground location for it. So I'm going to get that one done real quick, and I should be able to lay everything out and show y'all what it looks like when it's done. So I just got everything made up. Here's the wiring harness that'll control the switch that will in turn control the relay. And here is the harness and relay to control the blower motor. Now, one thing I've still got to do is hook up the fusible link to the relay harness, which is already connected at the battery and capped off. So I'll just pull the cap off of it, splice them together, and run the heat shrink over it. I'm also going to put a fusible link in line coming from the power at the battery to my switch. I think a 15 amp is what it calls for. So I've got to add that in. I'll make my own fusible link connection using 2 of these little connectors. I'm going to go ahead and lay everything out, pop the hood, and try to find a location to pull the wires through the firewall. After I get that done, then we'll have to find the wiring harness that controls the motor and make up a couple of connections for it, and then we just got to wire it all up and hopefully it works. Alright guys, so I just got some of the wiring done at the battery. I got one fusible link connected together for the relay, and I got the other link cut into the wire that goes out to the switch. I got them taped up right here along this line and up here at the side. This wire goes to my relay, and it's going to end up right up here behind the coolant jug, and it should be protected from the water, mud, anything like that, so it should be fine where it's at. Obviously I've got the battery disconnected for this because we don't want to accidentally arc anything off and cause damage to anything else. So I've got the negative unhooked right now. So what I'm going to do next is grab the second wire that goes from the relay to the blower motor and try to find us a spot over here on the firewall that I can feed it through and go up towards where the blower motor's at. Alright, so I just fished one wire through the firewall, and I'm worried about tearing up some more wires that are going through that same hole. It's a tight fit and I don't think it's going to work. So what I'm going to try to do is make a spot over here going through the wall where the fender is, and then go in where the door's at, and then in behind the plastic, and try to feed everything in through that way. I've got wires all over the place, so I'm having to track them down. It's starting to get dark. So I'm gonna try to run through this real quick, get it situated, and when I come back, hopefully I'll have it wired up and I can just walk you through each wire and how it connects, and maybe we can see this thing run. All right, so I think I tracked down the issue I was having. 2 of my pins on my fuse were reversed. So I got that fixed. I got a picture I'm gonna put over here on the side somewhere that shows an electric fan diagram, or that controls a fan or a blower motor, and that's what I used to track that down and fix the wiring issue. Now I got the ground hooked up. I've still got to make a ground for the switch that goes in the cab, but for right now I'll go ahead and use the alligator clip. And when I flip this on, it should light up, and you can hear over here the fans blowing. So I think this hardwire works. I'm gonna run it for a minute, make sure nothing's getting hot, make sure I don't smell anything burning, tape up the wires, get them all tucked away where they need to be, and put my dash back together. So it's a new day. I was gonna end the video last night because it got dark on me, but I went ahead and came out today, got the rest of the wiring buttoned up. I got the dash put back together. Up behind the dash, there's a metal bar that runs across through there that's got a couple of screw holes in it for the lower part of the dash to screw to. So I just got some short zip ties and zip tied all the wires up along the back side of that metal support bar. After I got done with that, I went and put all the screws back in my lower dash. There's like 6 or 8 of them. So one thing about the way I've got this run, it seems like it's going to work. The wires aren't getting hot. The fuse protects it, obviously, so if it draws too much current through, it'll pop the fuse, and it should keep me from having any trouble with the wiring. My Jeep's got climate control on it, so I do have to have the switch on to control the blending door. That way it'll come out either on the defroster or in the floor or straight out the front vents. We're almost up to 210 degrees, so I'm gonna go ahead and flip the switch on and see if it's gonna work or not. I'm gonna go ahead and switch it to the front vents, and I don't know how loud that is, but it's definitely blowing, and it's blowing warm, so that's a good sign. Go ahead and shut that off. Warmed it up pretty quick. Well, guys, it looks like everything's working like it's supposed to, or for at least how I've got it set up. I'm gonna go ahead and run with it like this for a while, and if anything happens to it or anything changes or tears up, I'll come back and show y'all, and we'll just go from there with it. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching the video. Hope y'all like the content. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and keep checking back for other projects.